Hello chess fans, in today's video we're going to go over my round 6 and 7 games, and these were pretty interesting games against slightly lower rated players. In the round 6 I think I played around a 1500 rated player, 1600 rated player, and around 2000 online, and the second round I played a 1100 rated player who was very underrated and actually pretty strong. He actually managed to get a winning position pretty quickly against me, but I managed to swindle him. So first I guess we'll look at the first game. So I started off with e4. I was playing the white pieces in this one, and my opponent played c6, and what I knew, I'd done some little bit of research here, is that he really does not know any theory whatsoever. Even in many main lines he didn't know his theory, so I thought I'd just play a very tricky variation, which is the two knights defense. And a lot of Caro-Kann players are going to take here and play bishop f5, and that's what he did, and played bishop f5. But this is actually a known trapping variation, because without this committing d4, we actually get some really good play here, because after knight g3, bishop g6, h4, threatening to trap the bishop with h5, h6, and knight e5, it's an important difference that we have this knight e5 move right away. We're threatening to double his pawns and attack his bishop. And this bishop h7 is a blunder. But if we look at the main line, after d4, dx here, bishop f5, knight g3, bishop g6, h4, and h6, notice here we have d4 instead of knight f3, which means we can't play this knight e5 move. So after knight f3, we're threatening knight e5, and the main line here follows knight d7. So this would be the main line, and I'm sure he has played this before. If you play the Caro-Kann, you almost certainly know this. But after knight takes e4, bishop f5 here, we get an improved version of the main line, because after knight e5, bishop h7, he might have thought, oh, d4, and we're in some bad version of the main line. We don't have knight d7. The knight's been got to e5. But here, actually, there's a tactic. And, I mean, there's two moves that win. Actually, no, there's only one move that wins here. But, yeah, see if you can find the move that wins here. And just think about this bishop. So this bishop is kind of good at the moment. So we want to make this bishop bad. So, yeah, I'll give you a few seconds. And, yeah, the move actually is, this is a common trap, actually, queen h5, and the only way to stop mate is with g6. And then as we can see, the bishop over here is pretty bad. But not only this, actually, we have a upcoming fork. So after here, the best move, surprisingly, that's never been played is to go with f6, and this would just be losing, but it's less losing. Knight f6 again. Here's another tactic. There's two moves that win here, actually, but there's one just very simple fork. And the simple fork is queen b3, attacking f7 and attacking b7, which would trap the rook. And here, there's not much you can do. The other good move, I'm pretty sure, is bishop c4, in which case e6 and a position follows where black is really inactive. But after queen b3, queen d5, he attacks my knight. He tried to get some counterplay. I took, bishop e2. Here he went queen d5. I'm thinking he prepared e5, but this is a blunder. I think more natural is to go e6 and develop your pieces. Queen d5, rook x, queen x e8, and at this point I was already winning, and I was against a 1500, so I was pretty sure I could convert this. Knight d7, queen b7, e6, castles, bishop e7, d4, and here I sacked the pawn because I wanted to get open lines. I didn't really think he'd actually take it. I thought he'd just castle, and then we'd had a position where I'm up in exchange. He might lose this guy, but I guess what he thought was that he'd win the h4 pawn as well. Here I'm supposed to go bishop e3, which I didn't really calculate, and I assume there's something after here. Maybe you can just take the pawn, actually. But I just went rook d1 because my whole idea was to tie him down. And here he's tied down because if he castles, he's going to lose this. And he does castle. And now here, he's just down a piece. And this was my idea. So c3, preventing the attack here. Bishop e5, threatening to go here. So I go here. Notice that I'm also covering the mate threat. Rook b8, queen d2, defending the b2 pawn. And also threatening to take on h6. So he was g5, protecting his h6 pawn. Here I went b3 so that I no longer have to worry about keeping an eye on this. And yeah, I was calculating. I remember here that I was thinking about rook d1, and I was thinking about ideas where I can't really move my queen. I'm not so sure how relevant it is here, but this position is +8, so it's a pretty easy win from here. Bishop e4, and here I was happy to see this move. This is not, my next move is not the best move by the engine, but I think it's a really practical human move that you should try to find. So the thing about this position is that if the queens are off the board, it's a really easy win. Like, those endgames are extremely easy to win. So how do you get queens off the board? So yeah, you might be thinking like, oh, this queen is kind of low on squares. It can no longer go anywhere here. But, like, you know, how would we trade queens? They're so far apart. Actually, the move f3 is a forced queen trade, because after bishop f5, bishop f2, his only square to not lose his queen is to go here. And then here I was happy. The engine really hates this move, but I think this is just an easy win now. And after this, trade the pawns. Notice that he can't come in on any of the squares, which is very nice for me. He goes back, you bring your king in the endgame. And this is pretty simple conversion. Notice he has a hole on e4, so I immediately try to go there. And also because there's a hole, I want to capture the piece, so I go rook c4 first, which defends the pawn, and provokes e5, which makes this even more pronounced hole, and knight e4. And here this knight is an absolute monster, so he got rid of it. And yeah, I got rid of that. The rook, I came back, I just wanted to trade rook, so I went here. And if he trades, he just completely lost. If he takes, and he has no threats. He couldn't even do this. So he goes back, I defend my kingside pawn, and yeah, this is pretty simple from here, and in this position my opponent resigned. So I went over this game a little bit quicker because I feel like it was just opening trap. Maybe if any one of you want to try this this knight f3 move, the main line actually is bishop g4, h3, and you just get the bishop pair. So even this I was prepared for, and I thought it was pretty pleasant for white. You just don't have to do anything much here. You can play like g3, bishop g2, d3, bishop d2, and you just have to wait because you have the bishop pair. Alright, let's go to my next game against the 1100. So this game was really bad by me, but I managed to swindle it and, well, just get really lucky at the end. So I went e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6. And here what I saw in the database is that he plays this queen e2 move. And this queen e2 move, you might be like, wait, this doesn't make sense. Why are you moving the queen in the opening? Yeah, that's exactly, it doesn't make any sense. And here black is more than equal in my opinion. I think black's already slightly better because the queen move doesn't make a lot of sense. And after b5, I prepared some stuff here where black gets a big advantage. And I'd also prepared, this is following the main line. Here we move our bishop here. Bishop c5 is also a line, b5 is also another line. Oop, not b4, b5. But bishop b7 is the main line. And here I had also prepared after c3 to play the Marshall attack. That was an attack. That's a very theoretical line in which I thought my opponent, who's like, 1100 or whatever, probably shouldn't know this. Even if you're 2000, you probably really shouldn't know the Marshall attack as it's incredibly complicated. But here he plays the anti-Marshall, and here I was kind of disappointed because the anti-Marshall is really annoying for black to deal with, and it's kind of boring as well because there's not a big way to get advantage. These days, as either color. So these days, what grandmasters are doing is playing b4, which I knew the idea to play b4, but I don't really like to overcommit these pawns so much because often they become weaknesses. Like they can play d4 or whatever, and then target this c4 square. So I like this bishop b7 move a little bit better. d3, and the only thing I knew here was that d6 is the main move. But I had no idea how to play those positions, so I was like, okay, if we get to this, then I'm not going to be happy because, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm usually not an e5 player, but I had prepped e5 for this tournament. And so here, what I knew was not a popular move was rook e8, but I think it's definitely a playable move because it's been played by people like Carlsen, like Vishy Anand, so this is still a playable move, and often it's used to confuse lower-rated players or like even high-rated GMs. And so here, what I thought was going to happen was knight c3, which stops this d5. But then after b4, knight d5, we get a position. I don't really know the lines here. But he played knight bd2, which I think is a small concession. And I played bishop f8. So the bishop's kind of misplaced on e7 because it's not really doing much. So you want to get to f8 where the rook would defend the pawn, and then you can go for d5. Here he plays c3. And what I knew about this position is that after knight bd2, what I knew about the position was that the main move would be h6, but main move was bishop f8, so I got my lines completely mixed up. c3, bishop f8, and I knew that white's gonna waste a move here with knight f1 or something, and now d5 is very strong, and then their knight's back on f1. What I did in the game is after c3, d5, we simply actually get a position where I don't have this useful move h6. And knight f1 arguably hurt him because as we see in the game after, okay, he trades a bunch of things off. This is all the best moves by the engine. He can go knight e4 in one move. If his knight was on f1, it would go knight g3 and then e4. So this is I had miscalculated. And so then here I was kind of like bashing myself for not playing h6. So I did it here, which is just a blunder. I thought a really long time in this position, and this is really characteristic of me. I think for long times and then make a blunder, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. If I'm playing fast, I know I'm not going to make a blunder, I guess. And then when I have to think, I usually make blunders. So I think better here would have been knight a5, and then after bishop a2, c5, and black just controls a little bit more space. I think white is slightly preferred here because bishop g5, knight h4, the queen comes in. He has really active pieces, but this is roughly around equal. I think it's slightly better for white. Instead, I went h6, and take a second here. It's a pretty easy tactic But I mean, it's not that easy of a tactic, but it's a pretty cool tactic that I didn't see at all in the game. And then I'll give you a few seconds. So my opponent played bishop takes h6. Boom. The tactical justification is that if I take, which is a blunder, he could take here, and here he just wins the piece right back, and I've got shattered pawns. Because if I take, he has knight f6 with a fork. And yeah, if I do something else here, like bishop g7 covering, he can even go back, and here he just gained a full pawn. So I went knight a5, attacking this. Bishop g5, the most accurate move. Very nice move by my opponent. Queen d7, bishop c2, and here he picked up a pawn. Now here I wasn't really that sad, because I was like, okay, I blundered. You know, I hadn't blundered like in a single game before this. In a single move before this game, so I was like, okay, a blunder is gonna happen. You know, I have to blunder every tournament. So here I played c5 and I tried to consolidate. My opponent played d4, immediately making a mistake, because what you need to do here as white is just use the fact that the a file pieces are really weak. So queen a1 would be the best move, and I have to go back, and my pieces are kind of misplaced. But this is kind of hard to do, because look, all your pieces are aiming at the king side, so you want to open them up. So d4 I think is a really natural mistake. Here I took, and here what I was calculating for like 5 minutes or so is to take here, and after takes here, knight c6. I really just did not see anything there, and I thought I was just much worse because I'm down a pawn. And my calculation was 100% correct. But sometimes when you calculate something and you calculate it's not good for you, you have to realize that everything else is not bad. So after like 5 minutes calculating, I was like, okay, there's nothing in this c takes line, so let me just go c4. And I played this like instantly without thinking about it. And then I was like, after I made the move, I was like, oh my goodness, I missed knight e5 completely, which attacks the queen and brings the queen closer to the attack. Here he played knight e5, and here I was considering resigning, but I was like, oh man, like I have to win this game if I want a chance at winning this tournament. So I played queen b7, threatening some stuff on this diagonal, queen h5, and here I played rook e6, and yeah, this was just desperation. I had nothing here because he's gonna move this knight and then mate me. Like, if he does this immediately, I think, yeah, I have takes here, and which threatens mate and the queen, so he'd be losing. But he went knight c5 with a fork. Pretty easy fork to see. And the best move was, what was the best move? Okay, no, the best move was later. You're supposed to go knight h6 and here and just lose the queen. But here I went rook h6, which is just, you know, hoping maybe he takes here. I can go like, I don't know, knight f6, takes here, takes here, takes here, takes here, and I would be down a piece. Oh no, I'm not down a piece. What am I down? I'm down 2 pawns. Okay. Yeah, okay, so this is, oh no, I'm just down 1 pawn. So this is not terrible, but this is what I was hoping for. The engine says that after queen h3, he's just completely winning because he defends the mate. But here he took, which gave me some hope, because after takes, he can't take the pawn, obviously, because it's defended. Here, I'm down the exchange and a pawn, and I'm completely losing. But at least I have the bishop pair, and I also have knight. So here I was kind of happy that, you know, I have chances here from, like, this position after c4. I was considering resigning because of how bad it was. So here I think I got some chances back. So I went knight c6, bishop c6, rook a1, taking the open file. I went bishop g7, attacking the pawn. He went rook a6, attacking my bishop. I went here, and I was figuring what was going to happen is here, and I'm just going to go back and, like, you know, it's a position. I'm probably dead loss. But here, like, my opponent really did me a big favor overall to help me win the tournament and played rook b6. An unexplainable blunder because it's just a free rook. So here my opponent, you know, blundered from +5 to -5, and you know, this is why you don't resign. So another thing I learned from this tournament is that I'm too quick to resign, because these positions, usually I resign immediately. In tournament, obviously, you want to make your opponent force it, but online, usually when I get a lost position, I just resign immediately. And I feel like that's a bad mentality to have. In tournament, I feel like you should probably resign if you're like down a queen or something. That's pretty rude. But if you're like down this exchange here in an online game, I would just resign immediately. Like the second I played c4, I'd probably just resign. But in these tournament games, you can learn a lot from trying to swindle these games, and you can let your opponent make mistakes. And so here I took the rook, and obviously here now I'm completely winning, and b3, I took here, takes here. My opponent was like spend like, after here, he had like 3 minutes. He spent like 5 seconds on this move, and then here he spent like 30 seconds. So I guess he recovered pretty quickly. But if I saw this move on my board, I would be so angry. B3, bishop takes d4, takes here, and here I just have this pass pawn, which is going to win me the game. Bishop takes h6, bishop c6, looking to trade the bishops off. Even though I have the bishop pair here, my opponent has the bishop pair as well. My idea of giving up this h6 pawn was that the central pawn would be more valuable because he could march it up the board and might cause me some problems. Bishop c6 here, and yeah, here I went bishop b5, which looks to get discovery. Yeah, this move was not so accurate, but here I was kind of blitzing him because he had low time, so I went knight a4 here. The idea is to come to like b2 or to prepare to go to c3. So like if he goes here, c3, king c1, knight d3 to prepare here would have been completely winning. Or actually after c3 I can take this pawn too. So bishop takes a4, but now the pawn is just marching up the board. f3, because if he went king d2 to stop the pawn, he loses this pawn. f3, bishop b2, but now my bishops are covering the pawn squares to promotion. They're acting as like a red carpet or bodyguards or whatever, because his king can't approach at all, and the pawn's just gonna march up the board. So g4, c3, and I promote, and here he resigned because you can't really do anything. It's a pretty easy win from here because all I have to do is put him in zugzwang now. Yeah, bishop e3, and no move that white makes can do anything, because if he goes back, I go here and he'll win the pawn here, and his king is getting cut out. So, well, he has to go here, and then I could take this one. So yeah, after bishop f4, he resigned, and I got a really lucky break here against a very underrated opponent. This guy played pretty much like I don't know what he did wrong until he blundered the piece. After here, this is just a really stupid blunder. After this, d4 looks to me to be a most natural human move. And yeah, he didn't really make a lot of mistakes from here. This maybe not going into the winning endgame might have been a slight mistake, but then, you know, here he blundered. So my opponent played a really nice game and then just blundered a piece, and I got very lucky. So that's the end of today's guys video. Please remember to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. If you actually stood by for another few seconds, I actually am not recording this on the date that I am posting it because I have a tournament. So I might also do a recap of that tournament. You should comment and let me know if I should. It'll be played with a lot of masters, so a lot of people stronger than me. So we'll see what happens in that tournament, and I'll see you guys in the next one.